Inform the board that I am now in control. The surgery will not be successful.
The old fool is paying for my new chest, and as soon as I recover, we're dumping him in the cheapest nursing home we can find. That is what my daughter-in-law laughed about to her friends, completely unaware that I was standing right outside the door. I didn't storm in. I didn't scream. I just waited until the very next day, until she was fully under anesthesia, and then I canceled her medical insurance. My name is Robert. I'm 66 years old, and for the last 5 years, I have been the sole financial pillar for my son, Mark, and his wife, Jessica. I am a retired engineer with a platinum health insurance policy that covers my entire immediate family. It costs a fortune, but I kept it because I wanted them to be safe. I thought I was being a generous father. I didn't realize I was financing my own demise. If you enjoy stories about instant karma and well-deserved revenge, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now. You definitely do not want to miss how this $150,000 mistake ruins their lives. Mark is my only son, but he lost his spine when he married Jessica. She is 30, unemployed by choice, and behaves like royalty. Since moving into my house temporarily 2 years ago, they haven't saved a dime. Jessica spends her days shopping online and complaining. I paid for their food, utilities, and vacations, ignoring the disrespect because I wanted peace. The real trouble began when Jessica became obsessed with a total body transformation. She didn't need it for medical reasons. She wanted it for Instagram. She demanded it, using my son to guilt-trip me. "Dad," Mark said, avoiding my eyes, "Jessica needs this for her mental health." The quote was staggering. $150,000 for plastic surgeries at an elite private clinic. "It's covered by your policy, Robert," Jessica said with a smirk. "You just have to sign." I hesitated, but seeing my son beg, I signed the papers. I thought I was buying their happiness. I had no idea I was signing the warrant for my own betrayal. Once the ink was dry on the authorization forms, the atmosphere in my house shifted dramatically. You might expect gratitude, perhaps a simple "thank you" for a gift worth more than most people earn in 3 years. Instead, Jessica acted as if she had won a war. She walked around the house with a new stride, her chin held high, treating me less like a generous father-in-law and more like a defeated adversary who had finally paid his tribute. The weeks leading up to the surgery were a nightmare of absolute entitlement. Jessica stopped doing even the most basic courtesies. She invited her friends over constantly to brag about her upcoming glow-up. I would sit in my own living room, trying to read the newspaper, while she loudly discussed the procedures on the phone. She referred to the $150,000 cost as peanuts that I apparently owed her for the immense burden of living in my luxury home. "It's going to be life-changing," she told Mark one evening while I was cooking dinner. Yes, I was cooking, because she claimed she was too emotionally stressed to handle domestic tasks before the operation. "Once I have the new body, I can finally start my career. We'll be famous, Mark." Mark just nodded, looking tired and worn out. He was working double shifts at his warehouse job to pay for her expensive post-op wardrobe, while she spent her days at spas prepping her skin on my dime. I tried to talk to him one night when we were alone in the garage. "Son, is this really what you want? She seems more focused on the surgery than on your marriage. She treats you like an assistant." Mark snapped at me, defensive and scared. "You don't understand, Dad. She's fragile. This will fix everything. Just let it be. Don't ruin this for me." I bit my tongue. I watched as she ordered expensive recovery pillows, special garments, and high-end supplements, charging them all to my account without even asking. She was building a shiny new life for herself, and I was starting to get a sinking feeling that neither Mark nor I were really part of that future. We were just the stepping stones she needed to climb. The surgery date was finally set for a Tuesday. By Monday afternoon, the mask she wore finally slipped completely, revealing the true face of the person I was welcoming into my family. The morning before the surgery, we drove to the clinic. It looked more like a five-star resort than a hospital. There were marble floors, abstract art on the walls, and a concierge who offered us sparkling water upon arrival. Jessica was in her element. She marched to the front desk, wearing designer sunglasses indoors, and slapped her ID down with the confidence of a CEO. Mark trailed behind her, carrying 3 heavy bags of her luggage like a hired bellboy. I walked in last, the silent financier of this entire charade. When the receptionist smiled and asked who the primary policyholder was, Jessica didn't even introduce me. She didn't say, "This is my father-in-law, Robert." Instead, she just jerked her thumb over her shoulder in my direction without even looking at me. "The paperwork is with him," she said dismissively. "I just need my wristband. I want to get settled in the VIP suite before the consultation." The receptionist looked uncomfortable, but processed my card. I signed the admission forms, my hand shaking slightly, not from age, but from suppressed anger. I watched as the staff fawned over Jessica, leading her away to her luxury room. Mark scrambled after her, forgetting to even hold the door for me. I followed them up to the room. It was spacious, with a view of the city skyline. Jessica immediately started unpacking her silk robes and setting up a ring light for her pre-op video update. I stood by the window, feeling like a ghost in my own life. "Robert, could you move?" Jessica snapped suddenly. "You're blocking the natural light. I need to take a selfie for my followers." I stepped aside. "Is there anything else you need?" I asked, testing the waters one last time. She didn't look up from her phone. "No. Actually, why don't you just go? Mark and I need some privacy to mentally prepare. Just make sure your phone is on tomorrow, in case there are billing issues." That was it. No thank you. No wish me luck. Just a command to leave and a reminder to keep my wallet open. I nodded slowly and walked out of the room, but I didn't leave the building. A strange feeling told me to stay close. I didn't actually leave the hospital. Something gnawed at me, a gut feeling I hadn't felt since my days inspecting faulty foundations on construction sites. I went down to the cafeteria, drank a black coffee to settle my nerves, and found myself walking back up to the VIP wing 30 minutes later. I told myself I had forgotten to give Mark the spare house key, but deep down, I think I wanted to confirm my suspicions. As I approached room 304, the hallway was deserted. The door to their suite was slightly ajar. I could hear high-pitched laughter echoing into the quiet corridor. Jessica was on speakerphone, likely bragging to her clique. I stopped dead in my tracks, pressing myself against the wall just out of sight. "Oh my God, Jess, you are so lucky," a female voice chirped from the phone. "That surgery costs a fortune. How did you pull it off?" "I know, right?" Jessica's voice was dripping with smug satisfaction. "I told you I'd handle it. The old fool is paying for everything. New chest, lipo, the works. He thinks he's being the supportive father, but honestly, it's the least he owes me for having to live in his house." My hand gripped the doorframe so hard, my knuckles turned white. I waited. I waited for Mark to speak up. I waited for my son to say, "Hey, don't talk about my dad like that." But there was only silence from him. Jessica continued, her voice dropping to a cruel, conspiratorial tone. "Listen, girls, here is the best part. As soon as I recover and look hot, Mark and I are putting the plan in motion. We're going to declare Robert mentally incompetent
or just dump him in that cheap state nursing home downtown. He won't need the space, and we need the cash to travel. He has served his purpose. I froze. The air left my lungs. I risked a glance through the crack in the door. Mark was sitting right there on the edge of the bed, scrolling on his phone. He heard every word. He didn't flinch. He didn't argue. He just nodded along, complicit in his wife's plan to discard me like trash. That was the moment the father in me died. I didn't burst in. I didn't scream. I simply turned around and walked away silently, my footsteps heavy on the linoleum floor. They had a plan to ruin me, but they forgot that I was the one holding the checkbook. I walked back to the elevator like a sleepwalker. My heart was pounding, but strangely, my hands were steady. I didn't go back in to confront them. Screaming at them would have only given them a chance to lie, to gaslight me, to say I misunderstood. No, I needed something more permanent than an argument. I drove home in silence. The house felt massive and empty, a testament to everything I had built and everything they wanted to steal from me. I sat in my leather armchair in the study and poured myself a glass of whiskey, but I didn't drink it. I just stared at the phone. For a moment, I considered calling the insurance company right then and there. It would have been easy. I could stop the surgery before it even happened. Jessica would be furious, Mark would cry, but they would still have a roof over their heads. They would still be debt-free. But then I remembered the laughter. I remembered the word dump. They weren't just using me. They were planning to discard me like broken furniture. If I stopped the surgery now, they would learn nothing. They would just wait for me to die naturally to take my money. A cold, icy resolve settled over me. I realized that simple rejection wasn't enough. They needed to feel the weight of the world without my support. I needed to let Jessica get exactly what she wanted, but at a price she could never afford. I looked at the clock. The surgery was scheduled for 8 a.m. the next morning. The hospital billing department wouldn't process the final claim until the patient was discharged or admitted post-op. There was a window of opportunity, a loophole. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the dark, watching the hours tick by, formulating the timeline. I had to play the loving father for just a few more hours. I had to let the trap snap shut only when there was no way for them to escape. I arrived at the hospital at 7 a.m. sharp. The air in the pre-op room was thick with the smell of antiseptic and expensive perfume. Jessica was already in her surgical gown, looking at herself in a handheld mirror, while the surgeon drew purple lines on her skin to mark the incision sites. She looked like a kid on Christmas morning, giddy and self-absorbed. Mark was pacing by the window, scrolling on his phone. When I walked in, neither of them greeted me. I stood by the door, my hand in my pocket, clutching my phone. This was it, the final crossroads. I decided to give my son one last chance to be a man, one last opportunity to prove that he wasn't entirely corrupted by his wife. I walked over to him and placed a hand on his shoulder. He flinched, surprised by the contact. "Mark," I said softly, looking him directly in the eyes. "I've been thinking. Family is the most important thing, right? We look out for each other?" He looked at me with confusion, then glanced nervously at Jessica. "Yeah, sure, Dad. Why are you acting so weird?" "I just want to know," I pressed, keeping my voice steady, "that you have my back, just like I have yours. That you wouldn't let anything bad happen to me." He sighed, clearly annoyed. He checked his watch. "Dad, seriously. Now isn't the time for a heart-to-heart. Jessica is about to go in. Just make sure you stay near the waiting room in case billing needs another signature on the release forms. Don't wander off." There it was. He didn't reassure me. He didn't hug me. He just reminded me to be a good little wallet. My heart hardened into stone. "Don't worry, Mark," I said, a strange calmness washing over me. "I won't be wandering off. I have business to attend to." I turned to Jessica as the nurses came to wheel her away. "Good luck, Jessica," I said with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "I truly hope you get exactly what you deserve." "Thanks, Robert," she beamed, completely missing the double meaning. "See you on the other side." I watched the doors swing shut behind them. My conscience was clear. I had given them a chance, and they had thrown it away. Now, it was time to make the call. The red light above the double doors of the operating room flickered on. That was the signal. It meant the anesthesia had taken hold, the prep was done, and the surgeon was making the first incision. The meter was officially running. Jessica was currently racking up thousands of dollars in billable hours, confident that my platinum card would cover every cent. I didn't sit down in the waiting room. I didn't pick up a magazine. Instead, I walked to a quiet corner of the hallway near the vending machines and pulled out my phone. My hands were perfectly steady as I dialed the direct line of my insurance broker, David. He had handled my accounts for 20 years. "Robert?" David answered on the second ring, sounding surprised. "Is everything all right? I thought you were at the hospital for your daughter-in-law." "I am," I said, my voice flat and emotionless. "But I'm calling to make an immediate change to my policy, David. I want to remove Mark and Jessica as beneficiaries. I want them off the plan, completely, effective immediately." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. "Robert, are you sure? If I process this now, the system updates in real time. Any claim submitted today, including the one for the surgery happening right now, will be flagged and rejected for lack of coverage." The pre-authorization was conditional on them being active members at the time of billing. "I understand the consequences perfectly," I replied, looking at the red light above the doors. "They are no longer my dependents. They are independent adults who can pay their own way. Do it." I heard the typing of a keyboard on the other end. It was the sound of a guillotine blade being hoisted up. "It's done," David said quietly. "They are removed. You'll receive a confirmation email in a moment." "Thank you, David." I hung up the phone. A wave of immense relief washed over me. It was done. The safety net was gone. Inside that operating room, Jessica was getting her dream body, but outside of it, she and Mark had just become liable for a debt that would crush them. I looked at the surgery in progress sign one last time, turned my back on it, and walked toward the exit. I walked out of that hospital into the bright sunshine and took the deepest breath I had taken in years. The air tasted sweet. For the first time in a decade, I wasn't worrying about Mark's future or Jessica's demands. I was just Robert again. I didn't go home to wait by the phone. Instead, I drove to my favorite steakhouse, the expensive one Jessica always said was too old-fashioned. I ordered a ribeye, medium rare, and a glass of their best red wine. While I waited for my food, I completed the second phase of my plan. I opened my banking app. Mark had a supplementary credit card linked to my account, the one Jessica used for her emergencies, which usually meant designer shoes. I tapped Deactivate Card and reported it as lost just to be sure it would decline instantly. Next, I accessed the joint household account used for bills. I transferred every single cent back into my personal savings, leaving the balance at exactly zero. My phone buzzed on the table. It was a text from Mark. "Surgery is going longer than expected. Where are you? Nurse needs to ask you something." I didn't reply. I didn't even read the rest. I simply went to my contacts list. I selected Mark's name and hit Block Caller. Then I did the same for Jessica. I stared at the screen for a moment, savoring the silence. No more whining. No more demands. No more threats of nursing homes. By the time my steak arrived, I was completely unreachable. Back at the hospital, Jessica was likely just being wheeled into recovery, dreaming of her new body. She didn't know yet that her credit cards were dead, her insurance was void, and her old fool of a sponsor had just vanished off the face of the earth. I took a sip of wine and smiled. The check was about to arrive, and for the first time, I wasn't the one paying it. 3 hours later, Jessica woke up in the luxury recovery suite, groggy but triumphant. She was bandaged and sore, but she smiled weakly at Mark, whispering, "We did it." She looked around the room, expecting flowers or perhaps champagne. She thought her new life was beginning. She was wrong. The door opened, but it wasn't a nurse with painkillers or the surgeon with congratulations. It was Mrs. Sterling, the hospital's head of billing, accompanied by 2 stern-looking security guards. She wasn't smiling. She held a clipboard like a weapon. "Mrs. Jessica," the administrator said, her voice cutting through the room like ice. "We have a serious problem. We attempted to process the final authorization for your procedure, but the insurer has rejected the claim." "That's impossible," Mark stammered, standing up nervously. "My dad pays for it. It's the Platinum plan. Just run it again." "We did, 3 times," Mrs. Sterling replied, handing Mark a printed invoice. "The policyholder removed you both from the plan this morning, effective immediately. The insurance company confirmed that, at the time of the procedure, you were uninsured." Mark looked at the paper. His hands started shaking violently. The total at the bottom wasn't just a number. It was a life sentence. $152,400. "We tried the credit card on file for the deposit," the administrator continued relentlessly, "but it was reported lost and declined. Since this was an elective cosmetic procedure, not an emergency, we require payment or a secured asset guarantee right now. If you cannot pay, we will be forced to involve the police for theft of services and place a lien on your personal assets before you leave this building." Jessica's face twisted in horror. The painkillers couldn't numb this shock. "Mark, fix this. Call him. Call Robert right now." Mark pulled out his phone with trembling fingers and dialed my number. He put it on speaker so they could all hear the salvation coming. But instead of my voice, the room was filled with the cold, mechanical sound of a blocked call. "The number you are trying to reach is not available." Mark looked at his wife, his eyes wide with terror. They were trapped. It took 2 days for Mark to finally reach me. He called from a stranger's phone because their service had been cut off due to missed payments. He wasn't apologizing. He was screaming in panic. "Dad, they are seizing the cars. We have to sell everything just to pay the legal fees. We are going to be homeless. How could you do this to us?" I let him finish his tantrum, calmly sipping my coffee on my patio. When he finally stopped for breath, I spoke clearly and coldly. "I heard you, Mark. I stood outside the door and heard Jessica's plan to dump me in a cheap nursing home the moment she got her new body. And I heard you say absolutely nothing to defend me." There was a dead silence on the line. The realization hit him like a truck. He knew he had been caught. "You wanted to save money on my care so you could travel?" I continued. "Well, now you'll have to learn to live frugally. Jessica got her surgery. She looks great. I hope she enjoys it because that new body is the only valuable thing you two have left." I hung up and changed my number the next day. The aftermath was brutal for them. They had to declare bankruptcy. They sold their luxury SUVs, Jessica's entire designer wardrobe, and moved into a cramped studio apartment in a bad part of town to handle the debt collectors. As for me, I sold the big house. It was too empty anyway. I used the money to book a first-class ticket to Italy. I'm spending my nursing home money on wine, travel, and enjoying my freedom. I realized that it is better to be alone and happy than to be surrounded by people who are just waiting for you to die. But now I have to ask you, was I too harsh? Should I have forgiven my son, or did they get exactly what they deserved for planning to betray me? What would you have done in my place? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of justice served, please smash that like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a new story. The end. Thank you for listening.